Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Eric Jenkins, and I'm the account manager for Connecting Up in TechSoup New Zealand, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the webinar Improving Communication and Collaboration Using Office 365, which will be presented by Matt Walton from InfoExchange. We'll just start the recording with a little bit of housekeeping here, so all the lines are muted. So if you've got any questions during the broadcast, please type it in your questions box on your webinar panel, and Matt will answer them at the end of the webinar. Please note that your comments and questions won't appear to the entire group, so that's okay. If you've got any technical issues, just type it into the question box, and I'll try my best to troubleshoot it. Please note, if you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have a few programs open, it can help if you close the other ones just to help the quality of the audio and video for you there. Otherwise, before we start, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you about within a week after the webinar ends. You'll then be able to access it at any time. Otherwise, that's it from me, so feel free to take it away, Matt.
Great, thank you, Eric, and welcome everyone to today's session on improving communication and collaboration using Office 365. So I'm sure there's a bit of a diverse group here, some that may have heard some of my previous webinars, some that are using Office 365 already, and some that maybe aren't using it yet and are interested in it. So hopefully today we can give a bit of a diverse opinion on Office 365 and show a range of ways where it can help. And I'm sure you'll all get some tips and tricks and ideas of how it could work at your organization. So just as a bit of context, so InfoExchange are a not-for-profit, and we work with hundreds of other not-for-profits, both in an ongoing way for our managed support clients, but also as once-off projects. So we have got a range of experience. I've also got experience specific to the not-for-profit sector. So a lot of what we're talking about is making sure that the tools are set up and used in a way that's really relevant and helpful to not-for-profit organizations, which is often quite different from how you'd implement it at a big bank or some of the other types of organizations that other sort of vendors work at. So I think hopefully today it's some really practical examples of how that can help you. So really today I'll start off with a bit of an introduction on Office 365 and some of the ways that people use it. I'll talk a bit about licensing and the costs associated with some of the paid add-ons, and give an overview of the Office 365 suite. And then I'll go into some key things about collaboration and things we need to think about when collaborating. So that's non-technical stuff. And then what I thought we could do, and this is new to this webinar, was I've created 8 common scenarios where Office 365 can really add value to organizations. So 8 of the most practical things that we get asked all the time of people wanting to do these things. So these scenarios are actually based on clients that we've implemented for or things we've seen in the sector. So hopefully that gives you, again, some really practical examples of where it was used. I'll also talk about what's next. Office 365 is commonly and regularly changing and evolving. So based on that, I'm going to give you an update and also some advice on where it's headed and some general tips. I'll also make sure that at the end, I'll give you a heap of links and information about where to go next. Conscious that this is only a 1-hour webinar, so I'm sure you're not going to solve everything today. So it's more about where you can go for help or for more training. So let's start off with what is Office 365. So as you can see there, Office 365 is quite a broad suite of applications. And as you say, as I said, it's constantly evolving. So this menu changes all the time. So almost every time I do a webinar, I have to take a new screenshot because there's more tools on there. You also notice that it does look different for different people. So there's different types of licenses and different applications that are maybe paid add-ons or things that are visible in mine, but not in yours. So Dynamics 365, for example, I use as a CRM, but most of you won't use that. So you won't see that there. So it is quite a broad and diverse suite of applications. But one of the most important things to remember is don't feel you need to use all of them, and sometimes using too many can cause issues as well. So I think the key is picking the ones that are suitable for you and making sure that they work for your organization and they're relevant to you and they add value to your organization. So the other thing to remember with a lot of these apps is some of these can replace things that you have previously done in a different way. So mail, calendar, people, for example, up the top left, that used to be what people would go out and buy an Exchange server for and have that sit in your office. So now you don't need an Exchange server for that. Basically, you get that for free with Office 365. And there's a whole heap of other tools. And you can see there that Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, they're embedded really well as part of the Office 365 suite, whereas you used to just go off and buy them separately as a software install. Now you can still do that, but now they're, particularly the online versions, are embedded as part of your Office 365 suite. So it gives you one place to go for all of those applications and to be able to have one menu where you can spend most of your day and get most of the information that you need. So as you see on some of these slides, there's links on the bottom that you can then go off and do your own research afterwards. So as Eric said, you'll get these slides in a PDF form after the webinar. So feel free to go off and do some additional research, or yeah, obviously contact me for questions too if you need to. So as we said, there are a lot of different ways to use Office 365, and some organizations, some of our clients just use it for email, and that's fine. Other clients use it for, a whole heap of range of things. So some of the more common ones, as we said, are email, replacing your Exchange server, and documents. So things like SharePoint and OneDrive, replacing your file server, contacts and those sort of things. But some of the more newer features are things like business intelligence and dashboards, internal processes and forms, where you're reducing all that paper-based manual effort that we see in so many not-for-profits. And then you look at the communication. So things like video conferencing, you now get Skype for Business as part of it. So being able to do that instant messaging and video conferencing through Skype for Business is, really adds value. It's reasonably mobile. So a lot of clients now are accessing either offline on their laptops through the synchronization or through the mobile app. So most of these apps that I've mentioned have a mobile app nowadays. So I've got a SharePoint app and a OneDrive app and all of those sort of things. So there's a whole heap of ways you can use Office 365 remotely. And the other thing that is becoming more and more important nowadays is security and privacy. So it's getting better and better at things like protecting you against spam and malware and CryptoLocker and those sort of things. So there are, compared to a lot of organizations who used to just host that in a server in their office without any sort of third-party spam products, you now get inbuilt spam for free as part of Office 365. You can also do a whole heap of stuff around password security and two-factor authentication and those sort of things if you want to, encryption. And one of the great things is now it's actually all of Office 365 for most people is now hosted in Australia. So for those who had concerns over hosting things overseas, then there now is a data center in both Sydney and Melbourne storing this information that lives in Office 365. So they're just some of the ways that people use Office 365. We could go on for days and could have twice as many things on this slide, but these are some of the common ones that I thought would be suitable for you. And we'll go into some more detail about a couple of these later around specific scenarios. So everyone loves something that's free. So, and that's really, it was probably over 3 years ago now that Microsoft launched Office 365 for free for not-for-profits in Australia. So ever since then, there's been a massive, adoption of the platform. It now actually is, we did a survey last year, it's now the most common email platform across the not-for-profit sector. So that was part of our not-for-profit technology survey. So it's becoming more and more popular and common for people to use it, and mostly because you can get a fair bit free as part of the E1 plan, which is the Enterprise One plan. So as you can see there, you get a 50 gig Exchange mailbox per user. Now that's massive, and most of our clients will never fill that up. And the same with 1 terabyte of storage per user for OneDrive. You also get storage in SharePoint per organization and per user as well. And you also get some great web-based and apps like Word Online and Excel Online. So you get all of that for free, and some basic mobile apps. So as we touched on before, things like Exchange, where you used to have to buy a server, install the software on the server, buy licenses for that server for Exchange, and then maintain it, that whole scenario used to cost a fair bit of money. Now, you just get that free. So that's called Exchange Online. File sharing, again, SharePoint, used to install that on a server, pay a license fee for that, and maintain that, and have to upgrade that every few years and buy new licenses every few years. Now you get that for free on SharePoint Online and OneDrive. So these were tools that used to be server-based and cost money. Now Microsoft's just giving them away for free to not-for-profits as their commitment to the sector. Video conferencing, Skype for Business. So you get a version of Skype for Business that's free, that again you used to install on a server and pay for. You do also get technical support. So you can call the Microsoft Help Desk. Now they're not going to come out and sit on the desk with you and show you how to use the tools, but from a technical perspective, you can log tickets if you have technical issues. And they do have that SLA, service level agreement, which means they're guaranteeing that the system is available and up 99.9% of the time. And they actually advertise their availability rates live on their website, which there's a link to later in the slides. So you can see how reliable they are and how often they go down. But I can tell you now, it's very rare, and I think that the most recent one was 99.98% available, which is pretty impressive and much better than most server-based applications. All right, so that's what you get with the free E-plan. And for many not-for-profits, that's enough. And so they can get away with not paying. And also, just to let you know, the licenses are per user, so you can mix and match. So you could have most of your staff on an E1 plan for free, and then those who needed some paid add-ons, you can just pay for a few staff. So yes, Office 365 does have some paid products that you can use if you choose to. And the most common product and the common need for paying for something is Office. So most people, including myself and most of my clients, still want a copy of Office. Current version is 2016, which is Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of those things on your local PC, which means you can work offline. You can work on a Word document on the plane and then upload it or synchronize it when you land. So that's a local copy. And the local versions of these products, Word, Excel, are generally a little bit better. And we find sort of the online versions generally have about 80% of the functionality. And if you want the more advanced functionality of Excel or Word, for example, then you would have the local version of Office 2016. So this is the same product that you used to buy as a once-off, and you still can for some of these, from Connecting Up or from Officeworks or wherever. So the Connecting Up version was $56, for example, where you bought it as a once-off from Connecting Up, installed it on one PC, and then used that for 2 years. And sometimes you could then get the upgrade to the next version within that 2 years, or after that, you would just buy another one for another $56 if you want to upgrade it again. Now, most types of software are moving to a monthly subscription model. So this one, for example, for Office Pro Plus, which is the top line there, Microsoft are charging, and this recently just went up actually, but with a new software model, Microsoft are charging $4.84, including GST, per user for Office Pro Plus. But what that means, per user, means that user can actually install it on up to 5 devices. So personally, I have Office on my work laptop, I have it on my iPhone, I have it on an iPad that I use sometimes for work, sometimes for personal. I have it on my Mac at home. And I could install it on, if I was on holiday or working from somewhere else on a spare PC, I could go and install it on that PC if I wanted to. So that gives you that flexibility and mobility that a lot of people are wanting nowadays, whereas the old model was just you install it on one device and that's all. So that's Pro Plus. Now you can also get Office as, there's a few different levels of plans. Now again, it's not Microsoft have never been very simple in their licensing models, but there are generally 2 different levels. There's a small business level, which there's a product called Business Premium, which is the equivalent of, sort of the equivalent of an E3 in the enterprise plans. So in the enterprise plans, if you want Office 2016, which includes the E1 and all the emails and all that other stuff, you could pay $6.71, and that is all your user would need. That includes Office, includes email and everything. Whereas if you had an E1, you'd need to then buy the Pro Plus on top of that. There's also a newish plan, which is E5, which is really the main difference, is that it's focused on the phone system and PSTN conferencing, which we can talk about a little bit later. But if you need either a hosted telephony solution, which is coming out later this year, or you want to have video conferencing with a dial-in number, then you can buy an E5 license. There's a whole range of other add-ons as well, where basically, sorry, I'm just having some technical difficulties, but back on board now. So a whole heap of other things that you could buy, like Microsoft Project and Visio and Power BI as well. So they're things that, again, you used to be able to buy them from Connecting Up, and in some cases you still can. As a once-off, these are now a subscription-based model. Microsoft also will continue to have these really great third-party tools, which are sort of add-ons. So things like the Enterprise Mobility Suite, which is giving you Intune and mobile device management, you can buy as an add-on for $3.54. So look, these aren't all the paid add-ons, and within your Office 365 tenant, you can actually review these and you can go and see a whole long list of others. But these are some common ones that we see in the sector that I just thought I'd raise as give you an idea. But as you said, there's a link there that you can then click on to go and see the rest of the plans. So I know this is a very busy slide, and this is thanks to someone else, Matt Wade, that I've borrowed this, but I found that Office 365 can be confusing. and there's a whole heap of applications. Now, some people love it. Some people get frustrated that there's more than one way to do most things. So we've already mentioned stuff like, where do I store my documents? Well, you can store some in SharePoint, you can store some in OneDrive. So what Microsoft have been doing, they've basically been just continually building a whole heap of new tools and providing them to you. However, what that can cause is a bit of duplication and confusion, particularly in the not-profit sector, where you often don't have time to research every tool all the time and have that really planned approach. So when people start seeing new applications coming out all the time, they either go off and start using them and start trying them, and then, you know, sometimes it's a bit scattergun and ad hoc in terms of which ones they use, or a lot of our clients do the other way, where they just get confused and they just stop using any. So I'm hoping this slide can give a bit of clarity around what tools are for which purpose. And again, I'll give some specific scenarios in a minute around what's good about each one and some of the most common ones. And this is continually evolving as well. So yeah, even probably since I've put this table in, there's been other tools that have been added on. So, but it's good to reference back and understand the diverse suite. But back to my original point, don't feel you need to use all of this. Just pick the things that are important for your organization. So when you're collaborating, there are multiple options for how you communicate and collaborate with your teams. So as you can see there along the bottom, there's one of the factors is your audience. So who are you communicating to? Is it individuals, groups, teams, or your whole organization? And depending on that is how you can choose which application to use. The other key point is the time sensitivity. So is it urgent and you want them to, you know, answer straight away? Or is it ad hoc and low and it's okay to sit in an inbox for a few days until you get a response? And on the right there's the collaboration tones. Do you want a formal email with, a contract in it? Or is it just you want a quick chat with one of your colleagues? So there's some of the things that you need to think about when choosing which tool you're going to use for collaboration. So giving some examples there, traditionally a lot of people have used Outlook and email for basically everything. But where we're headed is we're starting to use more fit for purpose tools. So Skype for Business is becoming more common. So I know in our organization, I do a lot of my messaging my colleagues and, little things like, do you want to go for coffee or asking quick questions? I tend to do that in Skype for Business nowadays or Teams. So it means it keeps all of that out of my inbox. And it means I've got a chance of keeping my inbox a little cleaner. Likewise, if I'm wanting a discussion with my organization and informing people about new things and asking for feedback, I'd probably be more likely to use Yammer, whereas traditionally it might have been an all-staff email that has gone around to the whole organization. And likewise, if you're trying to do a formal communication about a new policy to your organization, then you're more likely to use something like a SharePoint intranet as opposed to an all-staff email. So they're just some of the factors for you to think about when you're choosing applications. So, and trying to decide, should I use Yammer or should I use Teams or should I use SharePoint? Then this can help you determine the right tool for the right purpose for your organization. So what I thought we'd do now is go into a bit more detail around some really key real life examples. So I think I've got 8 here that I'm going to go through, and hopefully most of you will pick at least 1 or 2 of these that can go, yeah, look, I think that'll work for my organization, or that fits a need in my organization, and you can explore how you implement that as well. So let's get going, and as we said, we've got questions at the end. If you want any more detail, there's obviously going to be a fair bit more detail about each of these as we go. So let's talk about some examples. So team communication is one of the things that Office 365 prides itself on in terms of doing well. Now, there's, again, multiple ways to do this. It used to be Yammer, SharePoint sites used to be a good way to do it. But where Microsoft's headed, and a tool that I'm beginning to really love and see the value of, is a tool called Microsoft Teams. So what this is, it's becoming a central hub for all your team communication. So whereas a couple of years ago, or even more recently for most of our clients, you used to go to Outlook. When you logged in the morning, you used to go in Outlook and you'd have Outlook open most of the day. And email would be your primary form of communication. Whereas now, what we're seeing, going back to the last slide around collaboration factors, is there are multiple ways to communicate that aren't conducive to email. So this new platform, Teams, is actually a better way to communicate for a lot of those more diverse things. So it has the ability to do just chats. Now, whether that's one-on-one or with a group, can do that. So it has that informal communication as well. It allows you to do video conferencing embedded in your teams. So it can manage meetings and video conferences, again, both one-on-one or with a team. And even Microsoft acknowledges that everything you do is not a Microsoft tool. So many of our clients use Salesforce, or some of our clients also use Trello for project management, or whatever it may be. And Teams caters for that. It allows you to actually plug in and display other information from both Microsoft sources like SharePoint or OneNote, or external. So it's got a Salesforce plugin that you can present and actually see your Salesforce information through your Teams. So it means you can have Teams open and do most of your work in Teams if you wanted to. And you can access the information in Teams either through the desktop or through the mobile app or a web browser. So it's getting quite diverse in terms of what you can do on it and what you can see. And as well as just displaying other information, you can store information there. So some people who have traditionally had SharePoint team sites could still have those team sites, but you're actually displaying the SharePoint information that's stored. So all your documents, you can display that in Teams. So you can, again, have the security and the permissions and the version history and all the great stuff that SharePoint gives you, but the sort of different user interface for your specific team through Microsoft Teams. So when it comes to team communication, so if you have a requirement that your team is really struggling with their file server and they're having a closed Facebook group, or they're sending a lot of emails, all staff emails back and forwards, I would explore a tool like Teams for your just day-to-day team communication, and really just sharing both images, sharing web links, sharing documents, sharing notes, being able to comment on each other's, being able to break it up into different channels so that it is categorized. So it's not all just in one Facebook page where it's all on one feed. You can break it down into projects or categories or sub-teams. So it is quite a flexible tool. But you do need to think about how you set that up and how you structure that to work for each team. But I thought that was a good example that might give a few of your ideas around how you do some team communication. And again, Skype for Business, Microsoft are actually putting a lot of investment in Teams, and the word on the street is that actually Skype for Business is becoming more and more embedded in Teams, and eventually maybe you won't even open the Skype for Business app. You'll just do most of your communication within Teams, most of your video and chat communication within Teams. So you may not even need Skype for Business installed on your PC, but you can still do all your video conferencing and your meetings in Teams. And instead of storing a heap of stuff in minutes, agendas, and Word documents, then you just store it in your team notebook as well in OneNote. So there is some change in the way that you work if you want to adopt this new way of working. So that's one example of team communication. The other thing that's becoming more and more popular and more common is dashboards. So in this era of managers wanting more control over outcome measurement, over finances, the funding's getting tighter, efficiency is more important. Having that visibility, displaying our data is becoming more and more important. So you've probably heard all the buzzwords about big data or open data, and you've probably already heard of tools like Tableau or Power BI. So you basically get Power BI, which is a really powerful business analytics tool, free as part of Office 365. There is a paid version that some people might need if you're doing a lot of it and you're sharing a lot, but the free version actually gives you a fair bit. So don't assume you have to go off and buy the paid version to use Power BI. The great thing about Power BI is it displays from multiple data sources. So this dashboard, for example, in front of you, I think it's pulling data from an IRIS database, which is a government system that we got an extract from. It's pulling data from ABS around demographic data. It's pulling map information. It's pulling information from an Excel spreadsheet that you might have your KPIs in or your client information in. And it can pull data from a whole range of systems. So it could be Salesforce or your client management system or whatever it may be. So essentially what it's doing, it's presenting information that comes from a variety of sources. But it's giving the manager one spot to have a look at all of the things that are important to them. Which system you use and which data source you use is part of the project of getting this set up. But as a minimum, you can essentially just make these pretty pictures from an Excel document, as an example. SharePoint's another good spot where you can actually house the data or your KPIs in SharePoint lists and then display them through a dashboard. The other good thing about Power BI is it does integrate with all the other applications in the Office 365 suite. So I've just mentioned Teams a minute ago. You can actually embed a Power BI dashboard in Teams, which is great, which is what I use for my team. So that's a great way to do it. The same with SharePoint. So you could have a SharePoint site for your managers, and you can just embed a dashboard in there so that they don't have to go to multiple places and they don't have to open the Power BI app. The other most coolest bit about Power BI is it's actually interactive. So you can click on particular parts of the dashboard and it either drills down or filters, or so you can see an overall view, but then if you want more detail about one particular project or one particular demographic, then you can drill down into that. So again, this is an area where we're doing a lot more work helping organizations build these dashboards and understand their data and display that better. So that's an exciting piece that I don't know of many organizations who there wouldn't be someone internally who would get value out of this. So it is a trend that we're starting to see in the sector and an exciting tool that you get as part of Office 365. The other one that's quite common, if you're happy for me to move on, is board collaboration. So every not-for-profit has a board, and every board has agendas and minutes and policies and calendars and meetings and all those sort of things. And it's you know, a common request for us where we hear from clients, yeah, we need somewhere to store all this board information in a secure site. And I'm sure many of you out there have tried to have a Dropbox site or have some other way, you know, posting out packs of paper or sending massive emails out or spending ages trying to consolidate 20 Word documents into one PDF that you can send to boards. We see that a lot as well. So really what this is doing, it's setting up a central area using SharePoint, or to be honest, you could use Teams as well, but in this case, let's talk about SharePoint. So set up a SharePoint site and you can choose who gets access to it. So typically you'd give access to the board and a couple of key staff, including the CEO. Board members in Office 365 as volunteers, they can generally get, they are eligible to get an Office 365 account if you want them to have an organizational email address and access. Alternatively, most of Office 365 has the ability to share with external people. So using, it might mean they have to set up a general Microsoft account, so anyone with a Hotmail or Outlook.com or any like that. But so you can share that with external accounts as well. But that's up to you. But generally how we would do it is we can use an Office 365 group to manage the permissions and still do some of that email and communication and discussion. You can embed a Power BI dashboard into the board site if you want to manage the board KPIs. You can set up sub-sites under here to manage subcommittees or projects. And you can do, you know, SharePoint is a very flexible tool and you can do whatever you want, whether it's task lists or document management of policies or policy editing. You know, we often see areas where the board are actually working on the policies and editing the policies. So there's co-authoring, there's working together on documents instead of emailing things around. And also the risk of the thing to consider with external sort of accounts with boards is the risk associated with all of this critical information to your organization sitting in Gmail inboxes or personal Dropbox accounts or on the desktops of your board members. So by doing it in SharePoint, it's all concealed within an organizational managed system, and it gives you that flexibility for communication and collaboration, and to set up a system that works for all different types of boards and is scalable if you need to, as you said, if you're doing a strategic planning project, you can set up a sub-site or an area of the board site specifically for that and store information about that. So that's a really common thing that most organizations need. As we said, there's a few different ways to do it, but a SharePoint site's a pretty standard way to do that. Managing projects. So every client that we work with manages some form of project. So there are multiple ways to manage projects in Office 365. We have some clients who want to use Microsoft Project, which you can buy as a license, and do those really complex projects with dependencies and Gantt charts and a range of other things. We have others who use SharePoint for projects, so you can set up a project site in SharePoint. You can even sync Microsoft Project files with SharePoint and be able to have that online collaboration on projects. But one of the more modern ways, and Planner is reasonably new, is using Planner, which is a more user-friendly tool and similar to many of our clients use Trello as well. But now you essentially get Planner free as part of Office 365. So we're seeing more and more people start using this for their projects or even just tasks. So it doesn't have to be big organization-wide projects, could be mini team-based projects. So you can set these tasks or these planners up at any level. So it could be an individual just using them, or it could be a team collaborating, or it could be an organizational-wide strategic planning thing that the board's doing. So, and it means, again, instead of using something third-party like Trello, it means that this is the one username and password for all of these apps. All of the information is central, and you can link also to other internal tools. So there might be documents stored in SharePoint that can be displayed through Planner as well. So it's good at communication and collaboration, and you can manage various projects. And from a project manager's perspective, or someone working on multiple projects, you can also get a bit of a view, an overarching view of multiple projects and multiple tasks. So it's a reasonably flexible tool, and it's continuing in development as well. So yeah, none of these tools are essentially perfect, and there are, again, Trello's got some really good features as well that you know, Planner isn't quite there yet, but yeah, it's worth looking at which tool is suitable for you to manage projects, and usually that's based on your methodology. So if you're using that agile, you know, Kanban board sort of approach to managing projects, then Planner can work really well. But if you want a really rigid Gantt chart and really complex dependencies, then something like Microsoft Project may be better suited. So again, there's tools there. Whether you use them or not is up to you, but it's worth exploring. New user process. Now, I've just picked new user process as one of many things that these tools can do, but it's a common one that we're doing more and more of at the moment. But generally, what I'm talking about is tools that can collect information, store the information somewhere, and have automated workflows to do actions to do with that information. So we could be talking about an incident report or a maintenance request or an IT request in some cases. In this one, I'm referring to a new user request. So what we've done in this scenario is we've created a SharePoint list called, you know, new user request. And at Info Exchange, we use it anytime a new person starts. So we've got over 100 staff, and we often have new people coming on board. So the HR department needed this. So we've essentially developed a SharePoint list, and anyone who wants to employ a new staff member, so mostly managers, fills this out when a new person starts. And what it's doing, it's informing the rest of the organization or important people what these new people need. So basically it's saying to our IT team, hey, this person needs an email address, this person needs a laptop, this person needs an Office 365 account. It's saying to the facilities team, this person needs a desk, this person needs a phone, this person needs a uniform, whatever it may be. It's talking to the payroll department saying this person needs to be put on payroll, they need access to the HR system, etc. So there are a few different ways to do those forms. The one in the image is actually InfoPath, but there are some more modern tools coming into Office 365 now. Power Apps is one, which is great and designed more for mobile devices. And another one is Forms, which can do some of this information. It's probably not as complex or mature as InfoPath, but it's getting better at that, the ability to create and collect information. Flow is a inbuilt tool that manages workflows. So it allows you to notify these, the facilities department when a new user request has come in. And then when that person from the facilities department organizes the uniform or the pass card, then they actually go back to the SharePoint list and update that. And again, there's workflows from that. The other thing you can do on these lists, the Power Apps or the SharePoint list, you can actually display this with Power BI. So you could have a dashboard to show where everything is at, show how many are in progress, show how many of new people have started in the last year, and those sort of things. So again, I'm sure you can all think of examples where you've got paper forms sitting around and you want to automate that process. All right. The other quick one, external discussion groups. So we've done a few of these where an organisation is facilitating external groups and have used a tool like Yammer to give access to these third parties, but allow you to manage it and moderate it if you want to. So again, there's a desktop app, a mobile app, and a web browser. And you can create groups and topics for discussion if you want that. You can also embed Yammer in SharePoint if your staff want to see it. So again, it's a flexible tool, a bit like Facebook for Business, where instead of an external Facebook group, it allows you to manage that more carefully around Yammer. Another one of the most common ones that we see is replacing your file server. So SharePoint and OneDrive can do it. We don't recommend this for everyone. File servers are still good and useful for some types of organizations. But particularly for smaller organizations who don't have server infrastructure or people who are quite remote and not in the office, then having a cloud-based file server can work in using SharePoint document libraries. The new synchronization tool is actually getting even better, called Files on Demand, which means you can access everything through your Windows Explorer and sync them, choose to sync them if you want them offline, but you don't have to. SharePoint and OneDrive have great functions around version history, permissions, co-authoring, and SharePoint's also getting better at integrating with Office. So when I go to Word and I want to see my recent documents, it shows me the ones where I've saved in SharePoint. Or when I go to my email and go to link to an attachment, it shows me documents that I've edited in my SharePoint and OneDrive recently. So there's some great stuff there. All right, the last scenario that I just wanted to mention was Delve. So a lot of people have those manual contact lists or organizational charts, but Microsoft is actually doing this for you already without you having to do anything. It's pulling information from your Office 365 environment when you've put in the user information. And for those who want to, you can actually synchronize this to your Active Directory so that it brings across that information as well, if that's the infrastructure that you have. So this becomes a hub for staff information. So I know at InfoExchange, we don't have a separate list anymore. If I want a phone number of someone, I go to Delve. If I want to see who their manager is, I go to Delve. If I want to see what they've been working on and what their recent documents are, and I've got permission to it, I go to Delve. So it's becoming more a hub for information, and it's becoming smarter around analytics of every user as well. So this will continue to develop. All right, so let's move on to what's next. I'm conscious of time. We've got about 10 minutes to go, so I'm going to make sure that we cover off what's coming. Now, again, there's a lot more than this, but these are a few that I thought would be helpful for you to be aware of. So Skype for Business telephony is launching in Australia. So you can already use Skype for Business for video conferencing, and you can already have a dial-in number to video conferencing meetings like I use with an E5. But if you want a hosted telephony, it's coming later this year. I think Telstra are launching their version of this in July, I believe. But so keep an eye out for that. And as I said before, Skype for Business is becoming more and more integrated with Teams. So that's another thing to think about as well. But that means that a lot of our not-for-profits won't actually need a separate phone system. They can use Skype for Business as part of Office 365. I've already mentioned the Files on Demand OneDrive sync tool and the modern experience for SharePoint. They're continuing to improve, and yeah, a lot of our clients are getting excited about this and starting to use more and more the document management functionality around that. The other thing that's gradually been coming out is sector-based or license-based tools. So there's a bunch of tools called the Business Center, And there's a whole heap of little tools on the business premium plans for things like bookings and invoicing and travel costs and a whole heap of other stuff, contact manager. So they're like little small scale down tools that just might be helpful for not-for-profits. So a lot of them are new and not perfect, but it's good to keep an eye out for them. The other ones is there's a lot of new tools that have come out in the last 12 months, including Teams, Power Apps, Flow, Forms, etc. So look, again, a lot of them, they have come out with some basic functionality and they're continuing to build. So what we're looking forward to is each of these maturing and becoming more stable and adding different functionality around each one of those applications and becoming easier to use. So they'll just get better and better and better, and Microsoft is committed to all of those. And along with that comes the integration. So Teams and SharePoint are becoming more integrated together. Flow is becoming better at integrating with SharePoint and other apps. So I think the thing that we'll see more and more of is really that integration. Number 6 there, you might have seen there was an article recently that was released around the new subscription model. So you saw some of the prices went up, but and so there's some changes to the products available at Connecting Up. But what the great thing, what this means, and I know some of our clients are excited about it, it means that a lot of your IT vendors, if they're a Microsoft provider, like InfoExchange, for example, we can sell our clients Microsoft products directly through our monthly invoicing, as opposed to you having to go off and get them either directly from Connecting Up or from Microsoft. So it's just more an inclusive model for subscription-based. So even people like Telstra and others can now sell you Office 365 licenses from Office and all those other things. We talked about Delve, but I think there's a whole heap of new tools coming out. And My Analytics, some of you might already be getting that email around all of the information that's in Office 365 now sits in the Office graph. So that means Microsoft can display that back to you. So that's what My Analytics and Delve is trying to do. Security is becoming a more of a big issue for people. So Microsoft are doing their bit to help with that. So there's a lot of new features around that as well. Enterprise Mobility Suite can help. So that's what's next. I've also got some top 10 tips here where these are things that we find are really relevant and helpful to organizations and where some people go wrong. So hopefully these will help, where it's really just saying that only the applications that add value. So don't go off and try and use everything. Just use the ones that you think are suitable to you. Spend time considering how you use it. So don't just go off and start creating all these things in SharePoint without understanding what your staff are going to use it for and why they would go there. And before you roll it out, make sure you explain the benefits to staff and do some of those change management things around engagement and training. That's one of the most common failures that we see is people or IT departments just going, this is what we're using, off you go, without sort of bringing them along for the journey. Making sure the infrastructure is right. So Office 2016, you know, it's not going to be great if you try and install this on 10-year-old PCs on 3G connections and Office 2010. So it's getting those other things up to scratch. And resourcing the support or getting a provider or trainer to come in and help you with it. Those are the points, the 6 through to 9. We've talked about them around getting rid of those spreadsheets and automating it, stopping the paper forms and moving it to Power Apps and InfoPath, reducing travel with Skype for Business, and using Power BI dashboards. So, and then change management is definitely the most important. All right, so I won't need to talk about these, but you'll get this slide. So here's a heap of links that you can use that you can log into wherever you want from the PDF that Eric will send out. So whole heap of other stuff that you can access. And if you need help, these are a few things we're doing with Connecting Up around helping you move to Office 365, because we understand that it's not always something you can do yourself. So readiness assessments, do-it-yourself workshops, more webinars. We've got one of these every fortnight. And a conference. So next week I'm up at Connecting Up. So if anyone's coming up to the Gold Coast, come and see us, or log into the masterclass or the session. Or we can do one-on-one help as well around SharePoint or email or just advice. So conscious of time, I feel free to contact me directly. All my details are there, and I've cut it fine. I've only got 2 minutes to go until the. So what we might do, Eric, if you don't mind, maybe we can just follow up all the questions over email, if that's okay. I don't know if people mind. I can just follow them up directly, or people feel free to either give me a call or send me an email with a question, and I'm happy to do it offline, just conscious of everyone's time. So thank you so much. I hope you got something out of it, at least a couple of things, a couple of those scenarios that you thought, yes, that might be suitable. And yeah, the recording and the slides will go out very soon. So thanks for your time, and please get in touch.
All right.
Eric? Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt, for presenting today, and thank you everyone else for joining us. I hope you guys all learned a lot from the presentation. If you do have any questions that come to mind that you haven't already put to me now, please do send those through to events@connectingup.org or events@techsoup.net.nz. Otherwise, I'll be saving the questions you've already sent through, and we'll be sending those through as well. Otherwise, as Matt's just mentioned, you can contact him directly. You can see his details up there on the screen. Otherwise, they will be available as well when we send through the recording later, as well as the PDF. So don't forget that recording's coming out. It should be available within the next week, so do keep an eye out on your inbox. Otherwise, don't forget our next webinar is going to be another free one, which is gaining a clear understanding of your organization's data and impact using Power BI, which Matt did touch on briefly this session. And it's going to be on Thursday, the 10th of May, with Sam Hedberry, who's also from Info Exchange. So again, thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next time.